A happy Sunday and a happy Assumption Day to everyone that celebrates today, myself included. I hope you had a good day wherever you celebrated from. Welcome to tonight's broadcast with me, Gloria Mutesi. Starting us off tonight, international petroleum prices have again increased by more than 10% as Rwanda's government has continued to waive certain charges on such commodities so that the pinch is not felt by the end user. As Serge Ntore reports, the government has been forfeiting 84 Rwanda francs per litre on petrol and 67 Rwanda francs on diesel to be able to keep the prices at the pump relatively stable.
Since January this year, petroleum prices have steadily increased globally, now 2.5 times higher than they were at that time. Yet in Rwanda, prices have remained relatively unchanged thanks to a government decision to waive certain charges on such commodities in order to protect the end user. A rise in petroleum prices would mean that I would have to cut down on how many journeys I make. With favorable prices, a person is able to do more and to go about their business. Higher prices only make things more difficult for us.
The
government is always looking out for our interests, and we are grateful for this latest initiative. When petroleum prices go up, life becomes harder for us, and making money becomes more difficult. When they go up, we are forced to raise our fares as well, and our clients complain. We are all therefore benefiting from this government decision. The same concerns have also been aired by the country's biggest public transportation associations, so they too are grateful that the government has been shielding them from the effects of rising oil prices. Had bus fares increased, it would have been a problem for us because that means fewer people would be willing to travel, and our buses must keep moving. So that means that a bus that carries 29 people, for example, would have to leave the bus park with far less, which is a serious loss to us. The government forgoes that money because of the people, but we as transportation companies are gaining as well, because we would have been affected. Petroleum importers have also been sacrificing to make this possible. Last time we forfeited 5 Rwandan francs per litre, and during this month we gave up more money because the prices should have been revised on the 15th of July last month. However, following discussions with the government, we decided to wait to see where things go. So we decided to let the entire month pass without changing prices. That is a big sacrifice. Officials at the Rwanda Utilities and Regulatory Authority have confirmed that the government has lost billions to keep prices at the pump stable. You see that petrol prices have gone up by 10% globally and 16% for diesel. Here it's 8% for petrol and 6% for diesel. Over the next 2 months, the government will lose close to 8 billion Rwandan francs, which is a lot of money. Between May and September, the government will have lost close to 15 billion. Economic experts point out that there's a reason the government is willing to sacrifice so much. When prices go up, demand falls because people are not willing to consume as much. When that happens, the production of commodities also slows down, and so does the economy. The government therefore takes measures to keep prices stable in order to avoid such repercussions in the long run. It is important so that consumers do not get wind that prices are climbing, causing a reaction that could result in retailers also hiking prices further. So the government steps in, and none of that happens. Up to 45 million litres of petrol and diesel are sold in Rwanda every month, 65% of that diesel, and importers were paying 115 Rwandan francs per litre to the government's coffers, money meant to repair the country's roads. The government has been forfeiting 84 Rwandan francs per litre on petrol and 67 Rwandan francs on diesel to be able to keep prices at the pump relatively stable.
At the Kibeho Holy Land, Catholics from all over the world joined Rwandans in celebrating Assumption Day while complying with the COVID-19 prevention guidelines. People from around the world say they will now encourage others to visit Kibeho. Let's now hear from Jane Mutoni.
At 11 a.m., the second Mass had already begun. During the Assumption ceremony, Some Catholics were sitting inside the church, as the rest were outside listening to what's taking place from a radio station, using their phones, while many others were headed to fetch from a stream which they believed to be holy. Some were on their way coming from a stream after fetching water regarded as holy. Some Christians say that they consider Mother Mary to be the Mother of God, and that the fact that she has appeared here in Kibeho is an advantage. It's been 40 years since Mother Mary appeared in Kibeho. At that time, she appeared crying, sorrowfully, because the world is not listening to her and her son, and she wants everyone to listen to her son and return back to God. One of the reasons that Christians who travel from all over the world come to pray at Kibeho is because they believe that the prayers they pray from there will be quickly answered. One of their prayer requests was for this COVID-19 pandemic to end. Some foreigners who came to pray in Kibeho for the first time coming from other countries believe that it is a privilege to finally be in Rwanda. Ty and Jacob Starnett from the United States of America are convinced that what they have seen in Kibeho will be a message to pass on to their colleagues so that they visit the land as well.
It's peace. I come here to pray for America because America was coming like back in Rwanda back then. Everything is separating, people are dividing. So I'm coming here to pray to bring peace to America too. So I hope so. Her mother, she say, come here. She will intercede before God for us. So she pray for us.
For me, it's a time to rededicate myself to the Blessed Virgin, to bring the prayers, both my own and of the people of my parish back in Chillicothe, Ohio and Waverly, Ohio, and know her protection, her love for me, for my people, and for the whole world.
Christians at the ceremony venue were required to have registered in advance so that they don't exceed a maximum of 150 people at the church in order to comply with the COVID-19 prevention guidelines. As a result, many Christians had come but were asked to go back. Before the pandemic, the church used to accommodate 800 people. Bishop of the Diocese Catholic Church of Gikongoro, Hakizimana Celestin, urges Christians to keep adhering to the COVID-19 prevention guidelines in order to win this pandemic and return to normal life. We received those from Gabon, Poland, Togo, US and other countries, but there were a few, and those who were not able to make it were watching the ceremony stream live on YouTube, on our TV station and radio, as we hope that in the near future we shall be able to come together in one place and fellowship like before. This is the second time that the ceremony was attended by a limited number of people due to the COVID-19 restrictions. The Nyarugenge district used to receive more than 800,000 tourists a year coming to Kibeho from all over the world. But during these past 2 years, the number has dropped dramatically. Assumption used to see more than 80,000 Christians gathered, but now there were less than 400. Jane Mutoni, RTV News.
Many thanks, Jane Mutoni. Now, members of various religious denominations and churches across the country are happy that churches have been allowed to open once again and say that the COVID-19 pandemic has taught them important lessons about not being complacent when it comes to preventive measures. Before entering churches, people were required to first be registered, wash their hands with their temperature first taken before entry into the church. Various people from these different churches that resumed today are delighted for this step. However, there are some churches that have not resumed operations yet because they haven't fulfilled all the requirements. The leaders and congregants of these churches say they are now waiting for the local authorities to inspect their churches for them to be reopened. Officials in the Ministry of Local Government have warned that even though the places of worship have resumed operations, it does not mean it shouldn't be taken for granted, rather, and for those places of worship that haven't resumed yet, inspection should be done and ensure that everything is in place before they are reopened. The recent cabinet resolutions approved the opening of the churches that meet the requirements but must only receive 30% of their capacity. Now, about 5 months later, since Rwanda started vaccinating her citizens, there's been a couple of developments in the COVID-19 field, both in the country and across the world, from the debate about efficacy to the introduction of booster shots for some countries and many more. Earlier today, we spoke with Dr. Serge Ntore, who shares his insights about these developments.
It's still too early to say that vaccines are making a big difference, but we already see some good signs that vaccines are reducing death among people who have been covered before. We're seeing hospitals that were generally receiving cases, severe cases from mainly the city of Kigali. Nowadays, you're seeing transfers from other districts. That's why we are trying to cover also those districts as quick as possible with vaccines we have. So basically, the effect of vaccine to reduce severe cases and mortality is being observed for the ones we've covered before. But it's still really early to say that the impact of vaccine nationwide has been attained. We continue to see the changes, not yet the transmissions, but on the severity of the disease and mortality, we see the impact in many ways.
Certainly good news. Some of the recent developments show that booster shots are now being given in other countries rather. How do you interpret this, and will we need booster shots in Rwanda as well?
Yeah, the virus is changing itself. We've seen at least 4 major changes of these vaccines, normally called variants. Virus changes itself every single day, but in general, there are minor changes that make it even weaker than stronger. But like the example of Delta variant has been that this virus can even become more severe and more dangerous. So having a third dose will probably bring the vaccine efficacy even higher than what it was last year, when most of the vaccines were tested on a virus that was not yet mutating. Now, the virus has mutated, so the vaccine is being tested on another type of virus that adding a dose makes it even more efficacious to the virus. But a third dose should not be a problem, because it's not the first time. For COVID, I believe that a third dose is going to be necessary if the virus keeps changing, so that we can have a stronger and longer protection. So I don't see it as a problem. I see it as a normal ways of boosting our immune system, our defense system. Hopefully the virus will be weaker and people will keep the measures and we don't need another dose, or we vaccinate more people. But if not, a third dose is a normal way of keeping us stronger against the virus.
Okay, I guess we'll just have to brace our arms. Well, as we perhaps wind up, let's talk about long COVID. We've seen people across the world say they've experienced symptoms way after they've tested negative for COVID-19, and I believe there's still much to understand, but what is not understood should also not be ignored, right? What do you have to say about long COVID, and do you have any research being conducted in Rwanda here?
Yeah, absolutely. We're following up on people who have recovered from COVID-19 since last year. Generally, with the previous virus, it was not that much severe. With Delta, we see a lot of damages in the lungs that people are suffering even after testing negative. There are general symptoms that people who recovered have been presenting, depending on the level of severity they went through. Those who have been on oxygen for a long time, who have been having or living with symptoms for a really long time, even if they didn't go to oxygen. Generally, the virus destroys the lung cells, and recovering is a challenge and sometimes not reversible. The issue of COVID consequences that are affecting people who have recovered from COVID-19 is becoming another kind of pandemic that we may be facing for those who have been affected by this virus. That's where the vaccine comes in as an important protecting factor, that those who took the vaccine, even if they get some severe symptoms, the damages to the lungs are totally different from the damages without a vaccine. But long COVID is a serious challenge for clinicians. We've been having people who recovered from our treatment centers who are coming back in the hospital because their lungs are not able to continue to supply the oxygen as they should, and they need also oxygen support, and yet they are not COVID positive. Now, we've seen cases of people who are having fatigue for several months after recovering from COVID-19, who are losing the
some hearing,
even the hearing, even the
hearing,
it's affected a lot of organs. There are not many, but we have cases we are following since last year.
So we'll have to leave it at that for today. But thank you so much, Dr. Benson.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Well, to other matters now, according to our United Nations Climate Change Report, global warming has arrived with vengeance, and we'll see the Earth's average temperature rise significantly by the year 2030. Let's now hear from Gabi Muvunyi.
Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, predicts that global temperatures will rise from 1.2 degrees Celsius to 1.5 or 2 degrees Celsius by 2040. Dr. Gashugi Elize, a professor at the university specializing on environmental issues, points out that global warming poses a threat to humanity.
The sea levels are rising due to melting glaciers. This is where we see floods and increased heat temperatures globally, which leads to other things like unusual rainfall patterns. We have seen some of the effects here in Rwanda, not only in Rwanda but also in the region. We have seen hills cracking, landslides and heavy winds as well.
All pollutants, especially from industries, vehicles and elsewhere, are some of the major contributors towards the increase of global temperature. In order to control the level of vehicle emissions, a system has been established in Rwanda to monitor vehicles on a regular basis.
If you are to measure how far we have come, it is evident that we have been able to decrease vehicle emissions to some extent. This is because people are more aware. They are well informed on the matter of emissions cars emit, unlike before where people did not care or just did not understand.
The Rwanda Environment Management Authority points out that the government has put in place a number of measures, including setting standards for the level and type of greenhouse gases.
There is a law to prevent and control everything that pollutes the air. We now aim to reduce the use of fuel-operating vehicles and replacing them with more electric cars. You may have seen that this is something that is slowly picking up. We also have several charging points for the electric cars.
Climate change experts predict that the effects of the global warming will spread to all parts of the world, with high temperatures, floods and rising sea levels. The Rwandan government is committed to reducing the country's air emissions by 38% by the year 2030. Gabi Muvunyi, reporting for RTV News.
Many thanks, Gabi Muvunyi. Now, 4 months after the valuation process of property went digital and is now regulated directly by the Institute of Real Property Valuers in Rwanda, it's been noted that this new approach is helping to fight corruption. Serge Ntore with the details.
The digital system is now used by clients seeking property valuers, unlike before when they would go directly to them, resulting in many problems, including numerous allegations of corrupt practices. It was clear that problems of corruption could arise, with banks selecting 2 or 3 property valuers and signing contracts with them, and then excluding all the rest. It did not matter that the others were just as qualified. They would then be denied access to lucrative jobs because of that. The new system has been applauded by some, but not all. As long as the law does not favor anyone, it should not matter that you have 10 years of experience over me. You should not be able to get jobs more than I can. Because after all, to join the Association of Recognized Property Valuers, a person must first do 2 years as an intern for an established valuer and then pass an exam with more than 70%. Obviously, such a person is qualified to do the job and can compare themselves to others already doing such jobs. Those with extensive experience on the job do not agree, however, and complain that the new regulations have hit them hard, with some laying off staff because they can no longer afford to pay them. When clients used to come to us, we would serve them quickly and well so that we would build reputations for ourselves and get referrals. Now, however, it does not matter how you perform because you will have to wait to be allocated a client anyway. Some may think that it is a solution, and I'm sure that the people that introduced the system thought so too. But it was a solution that proved a problem for many because many valuers were doing this for a living, only for you to declare that the experience such people have built up means nothing and that they must now wait to be allocated clients. I do not believe that there is any business that can operate like that. Big clients like RIM Limited say they lost hundreds of millions because of shrewd property valuers, which is why the company decided to sign contracts with a few they chose to remain working with so that they could be held accountable when things went wrong, something they obviously can no longer do under the new system of doing things. We lost that 100 million Rwandan francs because of people who were creating collateral that never existed. And also there are also those who inflated the value of property, taking something worth 10 million Rwandan francs and saying it is worth 50 million, so that they can be given their cut, because we had no control over the property valuers, and we were losing money hand over fist. The clients knew what was happening and would then refuse to pay, citing those irregularities. That is why we decided to sign contracts with them, to hold them legally liable if things go wrong, because they signed a contract. Officials at the Institute of Real Property Valuers in Rwanda are giving assurances that all such grievances will progressively be addressed under the new system and stress that there is no going back to the way things were. We have a committee in charge of discipline, and when a complaint is submitted by a client, it is evaluated, and if necessary, the valuer is penalized for wrongdoing. People should stop complaining that they are losing work because it is not going anywhere. After all, no one else will do it, just qualified property valuers. However, certainly a valuer who had monopolized an entire bank by themselves will not get the workloads they were accustomed to, because such clients are now being fairly distributed among all property valuers, and those who are not getting any jobs are now going to see opportunities presenting themselves. IRPV also says a way is being sought to put the valuers in categories based on things like work experience and so on. Rwanda currently has 201 property valuers.
To the sports world now, as the Ministry of Sports issued guidelines on how sports will be conducted in order to mitigate the spread of the coronavirus. This week, sports women and men who have been participating in sport activities with a lot of enthusiasm due to the more than 2 weeks they had spent under lockdown say that they will nevertheless continue protecting themselves from COVID-19. The Amavubi national football team is continuing its preparations for a match with Mali as part of the qualifiers for the 2022 Qatar World Cup. It's a training session of 39 players, of which among them will be selected to face Mali in the match scheduled for early next month. Rwanda is in the 5th group with Mali, Uganda and Kenya. We now do take a short break, but we will be back with some international news. That's all we had for you tonight. Thank you for the privilege of your time. I wish you a joyful week ahead, full of answered prayers and perfect health. Otherwise, God bless you and keep you. And until next time, I'm Gloria Mutesi. Bye for now.